And welcome back, everybody. Shy Sox Fan 11 and Geriatric Gaming here with some thoughts on the anniversary stream. And at this point, I'm sure that you have pretty much already seen a number of content creators who've already shared their opinions. And I'm just very small potatoes content creator myself. But I did want to at least throw out my thoughts. If you caught me on stream lately, I talked a lot about what was discussed during the anniversary stream and what it means for the game. But if you didn't catch me on stream, this is pretty much thoughts about what the developer said is upcoming, what I think it's going to mean for the game, and what my feelings are on it. And in most cases, I was pretty surprised and pretty happy with what the developers were talking about changing as far as the game goes in the future. A lot of things that a lot of people have been asking about for quite a while now seem to be getting addressed, and that would be a really good thing for the game, for the long-term future of it as well as the short-term future of it. And just to go over a couple of these things, of course, the anniversary event was going to begin on June 16th. The new chapter, I believe, is going to release on the 7th, and when the new chapter releases, we're going to see an update to the main menu, which, not a big deal, but, hey, it's updated, it'll be fresh, it'll be different. The main thing they're talking about being available on June 7th is going to be preset loadouts. And that's something that's been mentioned before by people I play with as something you can find in other games that you would think Dead by Daylight would have had by now, but it's just taken a while to implement. But it's going to allow you to have preset perk loadouts and add-on loadouts and offering loadouts. So that way, if you want to play a certain loadout on a certain killer or survivor, rather than having to go try to put something together. And sometimes I'll do that if I play Survivor. I've run a no-mither build before. I've run a sabotage build before. We have a regular build. We'll be actually able to have those already preset where we can just hit a button, select it, and easy peasy, and instead of having to go through everything. And that's going to be a nice little change. Another change that they've talked about doing has to do with the Rift. Now, apparently, in the Rift, you'll be able to have both the Killer and the Survivor challenge selected. You'll be able to also go into the Rift and change your challenges while you're waiting in a lobby without having to unready. And as somebody who continuously goes into matches, particularly when I'm streaming, finishing up a challenge and forgetting to select another one while I'm waiting in a lobby, this is a nice quality of life addition. And again, it's something that you would think would not have been that difficult to come up with. It just took a while, but hey, we're not going to complain. This is a positive step forward on just making the game easier and things about the game easier. One of the big, important, exciting things that I'm looking forward to is they were talking about the Prestige Overhaul. That is tentatively scheduled for sometime in the summer of this year, but we'll see if it actually gets implemented at that time. The Prestige, if you look, none of my killers are Prestige. I don't want to lose all the blood points I put into them. I don't want to lose all the perks. I don't want to lose all the add-ons and the items. You know what? That's not going to be a thing anymore. And in fact, apparently, it looks like you'll be able to Prestige beyond even level 3. And there are going to be rewards that are going to be greater than what we currently have, which is just bloody cosmetics. And frankly, even though I've prestige survivors over time, none of my killers have been prestige because, as you can see just looking at my pig, none of our killers tend to ever wear the bloody cosmetics. We're always wearing something special. So what's the point to prestige? That's the way we've always felt, and we obviously weren't the only ones that felt that way. So again, a very positive quality of life change to hopefully make prestiging actually worth something and worth doing. And if that's the case, you know what? We might actually prestige our killers now. That might be something worthwhile doing. So again, a change for the better that I think is going to absolutely be something that other people have requested and is going to be a step in the right direction. Now, let's get into some of the bigger ones. There is going to be apparently a perk overhaul. The developers mentioned a number of perks. They said they're going to look at 40 meta perks total, and that these are going to be changed. And some of the perks they mentioned on the killer side: barbecue and chili, pop goes the weasel, corrupt, scourge hook, pain resonance, ruin. The survivor ones they mentioned: decisive strike, borrowed time, dead hard, iron will, self-care. And they said that they want to do this to change the meta. And I'm just going to say the only concern I have is something I mentioned on stream the other night, is that if I was a developer, I wouldn't just be asking why or whether or not these perks are being run all the time, because obviously these perks must get a ton of use. My question wouldn't be if they're being run. My question would be, why are they being run? And if you ask that question, that leads you to maybe other questions you need to be asking about game balance and why games go the way they go. And I think I mentioned on stream, for instance, we'll just pick two perks out of that list. Corrupt Intervention from the killer standpoint, Decisive Strike from the survivor standpoint. I run Decisive Strike on every single survivor build that I do. I run Corrupt on almost every single killer build that I do. I run Decisive because lots of killers will tend to tunnel off a hook, and Decisive has gotten me many an escape and many a survival in a match where if I wouldn't have had it, I would have been dead. Corrupt, I run because if I don't, especially when you play killers like, let's say, the Pig, if you don't, well, you're just going to lose gens before you can even get it down more often than not. So what does that mean? Well, if the developers are just simply going to look at these perks and nerf them, I don't think that's going to be a solution for whatever the problem is. You're going to see, I think, like, let's say if you were to nerf Decisive or Borrow Time, another perk they mentioned, I think you're going to see even more tunneling than you currently see now. And I think you might see that tunneling because you're going to see gens popping even faster than they already do now if you nerf all of these generator slowdown perks. I think rather than nerfing perks, I don't have a problem with meta perks. And even when you hear me complain in my matches sometimes about Dead Hard, I don't really have a problem with any of these perks being meta or being very strong. I don't want to play a game where all the perks are mediocre. My idea would be to buff other perks that don't get used and then give people who play either role alternatives that are just as strong as the current meta, and then you will see variety in that. And a perfect example of that to me is a perk in Dead Man's Switch that went from no one ever ran it to now it gets run, and it gets run a lot of times with Pain Resonance because it has such great synergy with it. That's a perfect example of a perk going from useless and never run to, hey, this perk is going to show up in people's builds because we made it a better perk. And I think that's what the developers need to do. I think there are so many perks that are literally useless and just are not worth running, that if they were buffed or changed or adjusted, that would change the meta by simply giving players more options to run. I think nerfing basically what is the strongest perks in the game, I don't necessarily think that's the answer. And I think if that's the route they go, I don't think it's going to end well. I think you're going to see a lot more quote-unquote unfun gameplay from either side as a result. And that, I think, will lead to more unhappy players. Again, my 2 cents. If you feel differently, I'd love to see comments below with people talking about what they feel about the changes. I mean, obviously, changing the meta is not a bad thing, but I think changing the meta by giving just as good of alternatives that are different is a far better idea than simply nerfing the meta and dragging it down to the mediocrity that you see currently in so many perks. But again, feel free to comment below. I'd love to hear what everybody's opinion is on that. Another change, and I really have a problem with this change, is they're changing the Moris, where they're getting rid of Moris entirely, and we almost never run Moris. So it's not like that's going to affect us, other than the fact we have so many in our inventory that I hope that they do something along the lines of the blood point replacement they did for the Hawkins offerings, if they just remove Moris as an offering altogether. Apparently you will automatically Mori the last survivor in the trial, and I have a problem with that because a lot of times the last survivor in a trial I want to give the hatch to, and if I'm going to be forced to automatically Mori that survivor, well, I don't want to have to do that. And I believe one of the developers said on their message boards, well, just don't down them. Well, you know, there are times that I bring somebody to a hatch after I've downed them simply because the hatch was close, because they almost made it on their own, because I had a change of heart at the last minute and decided, you know what, I'm going to let this person live. I'll give them hatch. They played really well. I mean, there's any number of reasons why I decide sometimes to give somebody the hatch at the last minute. I don't want to have my hand forced to Mori the last person in the match. Why can't it just simply be an option? When you bring a Mori into a match, even if they're on death hook, you have the option to Mori them, or you can still hook them. You know, maybe I'm doing a riff challenge. Maybe I need a hook for my riff challenge or a sacrifice for my riff challenge. Maybe I need another stack of barbecue. There can be any number of reasons why I don't want to Mori the last survivor. And I don't have a problem with it being base kit to be able to do that, but it should be an option. It should not be something that's forced upon the player. Again, one of the best parts of the game to me is bringing somebody to the hatch after a hard-fought game, or when I play Survivor, having a killer bring me to the hatch after a hard-fought game. That's such a good feeling. Developers, why would you want to take that out of the game? I have no idea. It doesn't make any sense. Make that Mori at the end optional, and this is a great idea, but as it currently stands, that's going to be a terrible idea. Other changes that are pretty big, there apparently will be an RPD rework. I actually have come to enjoy Raccoon City map. It's big, it's unwieldy, it is difficult to navigate, it has lots of problems, but much like Hawkins when it was first introduced, I didn't like Hawkins and then came around to liking it once I played on it a lot. I have come to actually not have a problem with Raccoon City. So I understand it's probably way too big a map. I understand it has problems. And I'm hoping whatever rework they do with it is not anything dramatic. It is one of the most beautiful maps in the game. It has a lot of unique areas and unique features, and I hope they don't ruin the map by reworking it. Simply maybe just cutting it in half might go a long way, and breaking it up into two different maps, one side or the other. That might just be an easy fix to some of the problems that it currently has. Let's hope that whatever they do to it does not mess it up. Speaking of Raccoon City, Resident Evil's been announced as a future chapter, and I'm excited for that. There's also going to be apparently bots added into custom games. They're saying late in this year, towards 2022, the end of 2022. That's a good thing. There's a lot of times I want to practice a new killer, or a lot of times I would just like to maybe practice Survivor, just practice looping, and you can't do that unless you play a Kill Your Friends, or obviously unless you're in a public match. But again, that's not really where you want to be practicing, let's say, a new killer or trying to learn a new map. Now we'll have bots in custom games. Hopefully the bots are not going to be great, but they're going to at least be some form of competition, and I'm looking forward to that. That's, again, something I think was long overdue in the game. I don't really want to see bots added in real games unless they're to replace players who disconnect in the middle of a game. That would be okay. But the fact they're adding them in custom games gives me hope that maybe you'll see them as replacements for DC players in public games in the future. But certainly having the ability to have bots in custom games will be a very nice feature, long overdue. Again, all of these, for the most part, and there were some other minor things that they mentioned. There's going to be bonuses for playing either Killer or Survivor in times where there's a shortage of that role. Let's be honest, that's mainly going to be people playing Killer, because that tends to be where the shortage is. There are going to be changes to the archives coming up. Lots of other things that they talked about. And I'm just going to say, by and large, overall, there's going to be a lot of good stuff coming if the developers follow through with what they've said in their stream. And I'm actually excited. I hope I'm not the only one. It seems like a lot of positive things for the game, a lot of positive things for both longtime players and new players. They also talked, and we didn't even touch upon it, being able to prestige people will allow certain perks to be available on all your characters now. It's going to reduce the grind. I mean, these are all positive things, and Dead by Daylight's had a rough couple of years since I started playing it, with a lot of bad press, with a lot of bad things, with bugs and issues with the game and balance issues, and just, you know, lots of things that were not positive for the game. And I'm hoping that the announcements they made during this stream are a sign that maybe the developers are not just listening to their community's feedback on what they want to see and what they don't, but that they're actually going to implement changes that play into that feedback and make the game better for everybody involved, and hopefully make for a more fun game, for a better balanced game, and a less grindy game. And I think, like I said, by and large, almost everything they announced was good. I'm cautious about a couple things, and let's be honest, they've announced other things in previous streams. If everybody remembers the opening game slowdown that they talked about, that was never implemented. So whether or not all of this will be implemented as promised, we'll wait and see. And behavior has not completely earned my trust, because again, they've said some things and have never really balanced what they said with what they were going to do. Let's hope that's not the case with this. Let's hope that everything gets done that they talked about, and let's hope that this upcoming year, this upcoming anniversary event is great for everybody, and that the game continues to grow. That's going to be good for everybody. We didn't even touch upon the new Killer and Survivor. The Dredge actually looks like he's going to be fun to play. We'll see how that happens when he comes out. But overall, I think a lot of positive stuff here. And please share below your thoughts on what you thought with the anniversary stream, with the changes they've announced, with potential changes on the horizon, what your thoughts are. I'd love to hear from everybody and see what your opinions are. But in the meantime, I hope everyone has a great time in their matches. And thank you so much for supporting the channel. One thing I also want to announce is that as we go into this anniversary event, we will be planning a 24-hour stream. More details about that will be coming in the future, but we will have hopefully a 24-hour stream that's going to feature us playing both Killer and Survivor, and hopefully being joined by many of our friends that we normally see join us whenever we do play Survivor. But keep tuned into the channel for more on that as we approach the anniversary. Until the next time, thanks so very much again for watching and listening and supporting the channel, and we'll see you in our next Dead by Daylight. Have a good one, everybody, and thanks again.